Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Doing Business in Bentonville. My name is Andy Wilson, and I'm the Executive Director and your host today. We really appreciate all the great things you're doing to help us grow and develop podcasts. I will tell you, you can always find us Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and, of course, LinkedIn. We're there. So we're always on your favorite streaming channels. And I will tell you, I have got such a great guest today. I could talk about this guy so much, but let's get straight to him. John Reeves, welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate you having me here.
It is such an honor to have you. Listen, I've known this guy like 30 years or something, and we're going to get into our working at the same huge place, Walmart stores, and John, 22 plus years from
22
you, right?
years with Walmart, yes.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you just look great, man. I don't think you changed a bit. I don't know how you're doing it, but keep doing it, man. You look awesome.
Well, thank you, Andy. I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have had those 22 years with Walmart. It was a great career, and it's still going on.
That's awesome. Well, doing business in Bentonville is all about retail and omnichannel. And what our purpose is that we're trying to demystify all the stuff, John, around omnichannel.
Right.
And I will tell you, when I was thinking about that, I thought of John because John's got this extensive career at Walmart, but he's also, as most of us has at Walmart, we've got into some other things that we're passionate about, which is retail, being an item merchant, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about that. Now, John, you're the president of your company, JOHA, and you've had that over 13 years.
Yeah,
right?
I started the company over 13 years ago, basically as a consultant and to work with suppliers who might be interested in doing business with Walmart. I've had several over the years and mainly focusing on import suppliers, direct import suppliers that might need somebody stateside to look at merchandising and give advice on types of products that they may be able to get into. So I do that, do a few sales calls every now and then on Walmart, but mainly stay focused on Walmart and Sam's.
Good. Great. Well, I'm glad that you're doing that because, you bring so much knowledge, expertise in that area. And now let's talk about Walmart a minute, okay? Let's talk about your career because when I first met you, you were like 15 years old or something. I looked at and so at Walmart, not really. But I remember you as a young buyer, merchant, and I can't tell you, as I thought about our time there, I was in operations at the time. I was running a region, 120 plus stores. And, one of the things I remember most about you is that Walmart asked me after about 3 years in the South to go open the West.
Right.
And, the Great West, the Pacific Northwest. And what a challenge that was. But I spent the next 4 years opening California all the way up to Oregon and all those states in between that. And it was a phenomenal experience. But I think maybe our paths crossed quite a bit during that time.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Actually, Andy, the first time I met you, I was in the sales promotion area of Walmart. Back then it was called sales promotion. Today it's marketing, but one of the functions that we had was the meetings, the shareholders meeting, the year-end meeting, or the year-beginning meeting.
Right.
And one of my roles was to handle the merchandise. And my first year in April of 1987, I came in, and my first assignment was the shareholders meeting at that time in Barnhill Arena.
Yeah.
And my job was to make sure all the merchandise got set up. And then, importantly, after that, to get that merchandise to the stores. And this particular meeting, that we selected the Fort Smith stores, which you were the district manager of at that time.
That's exactly right.
The first time I met you, and you took me to the stores, introduced me to the managers, and what had before been kind of a difficult situation. A lot of times the stores like, we got to take all this extra merchandise. Our inventories are high. Why do we need that? We smoothed that out, and it ended up being a really good deal for the stores, and we figured out how to get that merchandise there better.
I remember that. That was. And I came into the home office just after that as a regional. You're right. That was, Walmart moved me to Fort Smith, Arkansas. They said, we can watch you closer there, and I was part of the process of having an opportunity to develop and grow fast track in the company as you were. And again, all that great experience and care. Okay. Now, so in your career at Walmart, those 22 plus years, I know you also worked in Canada.
Yes.
So talk about that challenge, opportunity you were given in Canada.
Right. The end of 1993, was a buyer in menswear. Had been there since 1988, buying the men's basic program, underwear, workwear, dress shirts, ties, belts, all the basic programs. And I got a call from Brent Berry, who you know.
Oh, yeah.
A great Walmart merchant, called and said, hey, John, call me to his office. I got this unique opportunity for you if you're interested in it. Nobody knows this yet, but Walmart is very seriously in negotiations to buy the Woolco chain in Canada and start our first out-of-country retail operation. And they bought 122 Woolco stores in Canada. And I was honored to be selected to be one of the buyers that went to work with the merchants in Canada. We worked from January through November of 1994, and then grand opened 122 brand new Walmart stores in November of that year. I was one of several buyers, including Mike Antonetti, Ray Wilson, Dennis Wagner, Mary Jordan, Mary Inman.
Oh my God! Great merchants, great people,
great merchants. And then Brent Berry was, of course, our boss, and then Mel Redmond was assigned to be over all of that transition. We were called the transition team. Mm-hmm. That was just an incredibly fantastic year for me personally. It was tough. We had to get up every Monday morning and get on. We either would drive to Fayetteville at the old Drake Field and catch American Airlines to Nashville and then to Toronto, or if we were lucky, there would be a commander. That would take us. One of the Walmart twin prop commanders would take us, and we did that every week and come back on Friday. So we would get back around in the middle of the afternoon on Friday and spend the weekends with our families. And then Monday morning, we would turn around and go back and do that, and lived in downtown Toronto for that year. And just an incredible experience. And those stores, from the time that we took them over and the time that they grand opened, have done phenomenally well. And they're by far the number one retailer in Canada.
Right. They are, and they're doing really, really well. And I just seen where they had their year beginning meeting. Right. And Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, was there, and they talked about how well the Canada market is doing.
Right.
And so you were you and that team at the Pioneer, and you create. When you think about your time there, and I think for our guests and listeners, every time we have at Walmart we call it opportunity, but every time we have those opportunities, there's great learnings. Yeah, and we grow up and mature too in those situations. What are a couple of your greatest learnings through that year?
Well, the greatest learning, I think, was it wasn't just a numbers and detail thing; it was a culture thing.
Okay.
And to see a completely different culture, and Woolco in Canada had been floundering for several years. I don't know if you remember the old Woolco stores in the U.S.
I do remember those.
Cavernous stock rooms, and they had a lot of inventory in those stock rooms. So the culture, we had to not only teach the Walmart systems, we had to show them the Walmart culture. Yeah. Nobody better to do that in the world than Mel Redmond. He did a phenomenal job of bringing people that were intimidated, and worried. These people from the South coming in. Yeah. They made fun of our accents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, they were intimidated by it, and to see them grasp onto the concept and to see them thrive after we left was, that was something that I still remember and take with me in everything that I do.
Right. Well, one of the things about culture is that, it's the foundational that you build everything on.
Right.
And, Sam taught us about culture.
Right.
And he demonstrated that culture through his actions.
Right.
And everything he did.
Right.
And he taught us to do that.
Right.
And, and the 4 core beliefs at Walmart, I will tell you, I still think about those in my decisions today, in my business today, because those core beliefs are those foundational principles.
Right.
And you had to go teach those.
Right.
And for a year.
Right.
To embed those into a new culture.
Right.
In Canada.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I was incredibly blessed and incredibly honored.
Right.
To be chosen to do that.
Well, I will tell you, when we launched doing business in Bentonville, one of the things that was really important to me is to bring people like you in that's been extremely successful, major challenges and opportunities that you have had to navigate, because those are those great learnings. And I'm glad that you're going to be able to share some of those learnings with all of us today. So let's talk about some of the key things at Walmart. Okay. And then I want us to get in, and I'd love you to tell a couple stories today about some of those things. And by the way, one of the things that John and I are going to do is that I hope I've talked him into this. I'm going to say it now on camera, so he has to stay with it. But one of the things I want to do with John, and we shared this, is that he has got so much wisdom and knowledge around retail, around omnichannel, the culture, how the things that we're going to talk about, and what's gonna take in the future for all of us to figure out this phenomenal new retail experience called omnichannel. Right. It's exciting, isn't it?
It is exciting.
I mean,
it's challenging.
It is challenging, but oh my goodness, today retail is so exciting, from brick and mortar to online to everything else in between.
Right.
And I will tell you, it's nothing that I love shopping. I love going to stores. I know you don't want to talk about that. Right. But it is awful exciting to get on my app and order something that's going to be there this afternoon. I'm pretty pumped about that. Right. Yeah. And I'm here working. And
my wife's really pumped.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. So, all right. So 22 plus years at Walmart. The Canada experience. Right. So as you think about that, think about an individual that during some of that you want to share some learnings. I know you've talked about, we all have stories of Sam Walton. We all have stories of so many other leaders that impacted our lives. Right. But do you have a Sam story?
I do. I have several Sam stories. Going back to that shareholders meeting after I just moved to the office, and I was in charge of the merchandise, so I had to make sure everything was set up. I worked for JOHA, by the way. I don't know if you remember Joe.
Oh, I remember Joe. Oh, yeah.
Joe.
I love these names today.
Joe was a great guy, and he said, "Hey, John, Sam likes to get to those meetings pretty early." I go, "Okay, well, I can get there. What time? 6:30?" He goes, "No, you need to be there at 4 in case he shows up early."
4 a.m. 4 a.m. So we need to make sure our guests understand.
So I got there at 4 a.m. And
now this is at the Barnhill Arena
in Fayetteville. Right. And sure enough, 30 minutes later, Sam Walton walks in with his yellow legal pad. He always had the yellow legal pad with him. Yeah. He wanted to walk and talk about the merchandise. And more importantly, he wanted to pull some of the merchandise up to the stage with him. So... Well, I don't remember anybody that would go to those shareholders meetings back in those days. If you got there at 6 o'clock in the morning, even though the meeting didn't start till 9 or 10, Sam was always there on stage, and he had the merchandise, and he would talk about it, and he would ask people. It was a question and answer with Sam, and it was just like a little pep rally that he would put on, and he loved to do that.
He did.
The other thing that I did that year, I was in charge of the VPI program, which
tell our guests
what talk about Sam Walton without talking about the VPI program. You love the VPI.
Now, what did that stand for?
The VPI program stood for volume producing item.
Right.
And everybody in the company had to have an item that was their item that they promoted. And you couldn't go to a meeting without people having their items and talking about them. And the higher up you were, the more time you got to talk about your items. So, of course, Sam got to talk about his item a lot. But I was in charge of the VPI program. And what we would do is the stores would all submit their entrants. And I had two ladies that worked for me in the sales promotion area, and they would filter through all these VPI entrants and then put them on my desk on Wednesday afternoon. And I would have to go through and select for every region. We had a first, second, third place winner. Mm-hmm. And by noon on Friday, I had to have everything to PMDC, the Printing Mailing Distribution Center. And they would print up the VPI and send it to the stores overnight. My job on Saturday morning, and this was back when we had the Saturday morning meeting every Saturday.
Yeah.
And really didn't want to miss it because Sam was there and never knew what was going to happen. But my job was to have the VPI passed out to the auditorium. Ever seen the auditorium with a VPI? And back in those days, the stage in there was a stage in the auditorium, and they had the table on top of the stage, and Sam would sit there, David Glass, all the executives would be up there. And I had to sit on the stage to talk about the VPI, which was very intimidating for a young man, to sit next to Sam Walton talk about the VPI, but he loved it. Yeah. And that was the first thing he wanted to look at. Well, probably the second thing. First thing he wanted to look at was the sales.
Oh, card. Yeah, sales
and operations. Everybody had to be prepared to talk about sales, but he wanted to talk about the VPIs, and he loved merchandising. And I don't know if you remember some of his VPIs, but probably the most famous was the moon pies. The moon pies. He had moon pies all over the store.
I couldn't believe that item. Yeah, I mean, when he chose moon pies that year, I was blown away. We sold a lot of moon pies.
We sold a lot of moon pies, and I think we still have some of them. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was. Well, what we did, and I think let's unpack that for a moment, because what the VPI it created the focus around all of us being a merchant,
right?
Walmart, we've always said we're a merchant-driven company,
right.
Merchandise-driven company.
Right.
We were. It was so clear, wasn't it?
Right.
And the VPI was a way to get through all the clutter in business. There's a lot. And we come together and we would talk merchandising.
Right.
And I think no matter what your company is today, I think you've got to have the clarity of your purpose.
Right.
You heard me mention earlier about our purpose at doing business in Bentonville. That's to demystify this whole thing around retail and omnichannel. Well, I know when we created doing business in Bentonville, the first thing we did, we set out and said, okay, we have to write a purpose statement.
Right.
That's our way forward.
Right.
That's exactly what the VPI was.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So, John, when as you think about merchandising and all, again, the VPI. So go back to the shareholders meeting.
Okay.
All right. 4:30 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
Sam Walton walks in with his legal pad.
Right.
And you were sitting there.
Right.
Yeah, you're ready to go.
I wasn't sitting. I was ready for him. To me, it was intimidating, but what an honor.
Yeah.
He was the greatest merchant ever.
Yeah.
And I had several times in my career, I had those one-on-one moments where I got to just absorb that and maybe intimidated at the time, but I look back on it now and I think, wow, what a blessing that was to me and to be able to spend that time with him. Mm-hmm. And, there was no pretension. There was nothing. It was just him wanting to talk about merchandise.
Right. Yeah.
That was.
We have such great stories of Sam, and we're going to tell a lot of stories about Sam. There's some other people, and another person that I want to ask you about, who, in my opinion, was a great merchant, and that was Bill Fields.
Sure.
The late, great Bill Fields.
The late, great Bill Fields, yeah.
Yeah.
Bill was a fantastic merchant. He was the executive VP of merchandising for most of the time when I was a buyer there. And Bill was, he was kind of an intimidating guy, to be honest with you. He was tall.
Yeah.
He was thin. He was tan. He was a little quirky.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was buying men's underwear, and which is men's underwear at that time. It probably still is. I'm not really sure, but it was a lower margin volume driving category within the menswear area that just drove a ton of volume.
Yeah.
And Bill came over to me one time at my desk and peeked out, peered over the desk. We had the little low wall from this.
Yeah, these cubicles. Yeah.
I could sense him there before he, before he said anything. And he said, "Hey, John, can you take your prices down and raise your margin? Can you take your prices down and raise your margin?" I said, he said, "No, you don't have to answer me now. I'll come back and check in a couple of days." So I spent 2 days, what does he want? What does he need?
Yeah.
How do you raise your margin by lowering your retails? And he came back a couple of days later because I noticed that we have some color fashion underwear in the men's area that has a higher margin than the white underwear. Mm-hmm. So what would happen if you rolled back your price on the colored underwear, still maintain a pretty healthy margin? And so I did it. He said, "Okay, well, that's a good enough reason to do it." So we did it. And guess what? The overall margin for the overall sales raised for the category, and the overall margin for the category raised. So it was just those little lessons. He wouldn't come out and say, "Here's what you need to do." He would pose a question to you and make you think about what it is you need to do.
Yeah.
And I was buying dress shirts. One time he came over and said, "When are we ever going to get a decent dress shirt?"
Yeah.
And walked off.
Yeah.
But, again, I extensively looked at the market. I compared everybody's dress shirt, and I went back into him. I said, "Well, you know what? There's really not a lot of difference because now I just wanted to see what you thought."
Oh, yeah. Great leaders also ask great questions.
Right.
And, one of the things, Sam would ask great questions, and really all of our leaders would at Walmart. But as we grew up and learned from those, is that in order to ask a great question, you've got to know the details.
Right.
And Bill Phillips knew the details.
You did.
He already studied that idea. Right. So it's Sam and other great leaders. And I think for our audience is that great questions, you should ask them, but you've got some homework to do in order to ask that question. Right. And that's what they would do. And they wouldn't tell us what to do. They would ask questions.
Right.
And we would
make you think.
So we had to go back, but that was our training and part of our training and development.
Right.
And that's what they wanted us to do, without just telling us what to do.
Right.
And because by that point, you own that now.
Right.
And
I got to tell you, Andy, I took that concept, and through every buying position that I ever had, I utilized that concept, and it always worked.
Yeah, it does. It really does, doesn't it?
It always.
Such great leaders. And so I love this leadership discussion. Now, also, you mentioned earlier Mel Redmond.
Right.
And again, a great friend of ours. He had a great career at Walmart. He did so much. You're right. And I even lived across the street from the man. So and he's a bit older than me, but I got to really ask him a lot of great questions.
Right.
Mel, because I was young. I came up and I had this more responsibility I ever had in my life. I was a district manager with 12 stores. I go in the next day, I have 125 stores. How do you manage, a $3 billion business with 10,000 people and all of that? And Mel, I would just sit with Mel and ask questions.
Right.
Mel, what would you do? Because he'd been a regional. He'd done that job. And, he was a great resource to me. So when you think of Mel Redmond, what are some things that Mel taught you, especially in Canada or other places?
Well, I would tell you, Mel was tough.
Yeah.
But he was also genuine, and he cared about people, and he was the kind of guy that would look you in the eye and tell you what he perceives you need to work on.
Right.
I've had many reviews and evaluations in my time with Walmart. The one that I thought was the best I ever had was the one with Mel Redmond.
Yeah.
He didn't beat around the bush. He said, "John, you're a good person and everything, but I'd like to see you be a little bit more aggressive." Mm-hmm. And he pointed out things to me that really helped me.
Yeah.
Now I had something I could work on to improve, and not just checking the boxes and that type of thing, which a lot of the evaluations were. Mm-hmm. Nobody really wanted to dig in and really try to help you. But Mel was the kind of guy that would do that. What I saw in Canada, the job they did in Canada, and I think you could probably ask anybody from that team in Canada, whether they were on the transition team or whether they're still working at Walmart Canada today, what they thought about Mel Redmond. They would all have great things to say. It was the perfect person to take that responsibility. You needed somebody that was tough. You needed somebody that cared. You needed somebody that had a great way of communicating with people, and nobody told a better story than Mel Redmond. Tell you that. And part of that cultural event for us was not only did we work extremely hard, but we also had time together in the evenings, and that was Mel's time to tell stories or ask all of us to tell stories, and we really bonded as a group, and I think that was due to his leadership.
Right. One of the things at Walmart that was, when we would travel, we say 2 people to a room.
Right.
Back in those days, and when you grow up in it, you don't know any different.
Right.
But I will tell you, when I was running the West, Rob Walton was in charge of real estate at the time. And so I was then, because I was opening the West and years in front of us to open, and the strategy we had to open the West, and which was the last great frontier of Walmart. Right. We were already everywhere else in the country, in the U.S. And so I would go on real estate trips. So I would know exactly where the future was going to be in stores and distribution centers, et cetera. And Rob Walton was leading that, and Rob would ask me to room with him. And you talking about intimidating. And so the reason is I was a runner at the time, and before I got into cycling, so I ran every day. Well, Rob was a runner. So he said, I want you to run because we're going to run the next day. So, not that I don't have enough pressure about hanging out all day with you. Now I got to room with you, and I got to get up and room with you the next day, And I was like, how do we do this? But he would talk. We'd sit out at night and we would just talk.
Right.
We would talk about, his thoughts about the future in California, Arizona, up through Wyoming and all the way up to Portland and all that area in Oregon. And we would talk through that at night.
Right.
And he would share his thoughts with me.
Right.
Because the next morning you were running fast from project to project to project. Yeah. But he would sit down at night, and those couple of nights we would have there, it was unbelievable, the learning.
Right.
Now, I know a lot of it's like, I don't want to room together. I will tell you what, fine. But here's the thing. Find the space with your leader and develop that relationship where you can share much more than just what's on that list that you got to check off.
Right.
And that's exactly what Mel did.
Exactly.
You were working all day, then at night he would share ideas and conversation and culture.
Right.
Yeah. And so such a great opportunity.
Right. I had another opportunity, Andy, that very fortunate as a young buyer, I got a call to go on a trip to Arizona. And Arizona was a fairly new market, and I know you remember Al Johnson, who was the executive VP of merchandising prior to Bill Fields. He had retired. David Glass, who was the president, CEO of Walmart at the time, wanted to go to Arizona to see the Arizona stores, and he invited Al Johnson to go with him because he respected Al's opinion. And so whenever Walmart would take a plane, they always had to fill it.
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate enough to get one of the seats on the plane. And we went to every Arizona store we had. And I was in menswear at the time, so I focused on the menswear area. And then on the plane and in the car, just this dialogue between David and Al about Arizona. And they would have this in-depth, intense dialogue going on. And they would turn to me and go, well, John, what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought, well, why do you care what I think?
Yeah.
They did. They cared what you thought, and they wanted to hear your opinion. You were a part of that team that was out there. And so those were awesome opportunities to have and things I don't treasure.
I think that's a great story. And, we didn't know we couldn't do some things, back in the day. And I remember when I had the when I first came up to regional vice president, and I got Louisiana in the South area, and I was walking to a meeting, and David Glass come out, and we were chatting. He said, "How you doing? How's things going?" I was new in the market, and I said this. I said, "Mr. Glass, I wish you would travel with me sometime." Why I said that, I don't know. And I got a call from his assistant that afternoon, and he scheduled a travel with me. And to your point, we actually did it. We actually spent 2 days in Louisiana. And I remember we were talking at that point food, but we weren't in the food that we are today. And so David said, we went to the stores, and he said, let's go to competition always. And so I said, sure. And he was very familiar with the food stores in New York. We were in New Orleans. And so he said, we're going to grab a hot dog and we're going to walk to the store. And what happened was we went up and ordered at this wonderful grocery store there, and we ordered a hot dog, and then we started walking to the store. And you didn't go anywhere without a legal pad in your hand. Yeah. And so we started walking, and David starts talking about merchant items, going down the food aisle. And he was talking about the item, about the manufacturer, all about the details. I found a trash can. I threw my hot dog in it. I pulled out my legal pad, and I just started taking notes. It was one of the greatest tours of food, one of the first and greatest tours of food I still remember. He was so knowledgeable about food, and that's all we did for that hour was talk aisle by aisle by aisle, key items. And he said this. Now, this was a bit years ago. Okay, it was probably in the early 90s. Right. He said the number one category in the future will be water. He was about 20 years early on that, but he nailed it. Yeah, right here. He nailed it. Right. He said water will be the number one category. I asked the question, it will outsell soft drinks? He said, absolutely. Well, there you go. Yeah. That was David. Yeah. His vision for food.
Very bright, very bright.
Yeah, you're right.
Very good. He was quietly bright. I mean,
he was a quiet leader.
Never heard David raise his voice.
Yeah. He was a quiet leader. Yeah. Yeah, very, very much so. Oh, man, these are such great stories. Now,
one thing I wanted to say about that trip that I took with David and Al, and this would tell you about servant leadership. We got off the plane on a tarmac. We were taking a company plane. And I got off, was kind of looking around, what do we do next? And I see David Glass carry 2 bags with him, his and mine. Okay, I said, excuse me, I can take my own bag. That's all right. He had it. Yeah. He was just that kind of servant. He was a servant leader. He was going to set the example of how to lead and how to take care of people.
I always said this, David Glass is always one of the smartest people in the room. Yeah. He was that quiet leader, but he was listening and learning. And what he did for Walmart in food and distribution, Walmart would not be what happened today without David Glass. Exactly. And so many other great leaders at the time. Right. Sam could pick those great leaders around. Yeah. He surrounded himself with that had the strengths that maybe Sam did not have. Right. But Sam had the vision, and then he surrounded himself with great men and women to help execute that vision, and it worked. Right. Yeah, it worked, didn't it, John?
It did. And Don Soderquist, another one, and just filled his role so perfectly.
Oh, perfectly, perfectly.
And then I remember Al Miles too. Sam really loved Al Miles.
Yeah, he was an operator. He was an executor, and in that point in time, we needed that discipline that Al brought. Right. Yeah, I think the learning here is today, and I always share stories, and there's so much more. But I think the learning here is, as leaders, we have to step back and really look at talent that people that are better than we are. Right. And what are they great at, and then let them loose. Let them loose to go do the things. And that's exactly what Sam did. he let those leaders move forward with the vision of building, at that time, not the largest company, but just a great company.
Right.
I don't think I ever heard him say, we're going to build the largest company.
No, in fact, I very specifically remember him in a Saturday meeting. We had just become the number one retailer, taken out Kmart. This was in the early 90s, I think, Andy. And
Right.
I remember him saying, I don't care about being the biggest. I don't care about being the best. I'm the best.
Right.
Right.
Okay, here's what I'd like to do, John, as for all our viewers. I think this has been a great introduction of you and some of your background and your experience and what you're passionate about. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But what I'd like to do is that what John and I are going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some really key topics around omnichannel, around retail. I know there's so much depth in this space. And we're going to get down into some of that, okay? And I want to, because, with omnichannel today, as you look at some key elements around, this whole tech-driven experience that we are now engaged in, are this seamless omnichannel shopping that's taking place. I want us to focus on, that. Okay, what is their brick and mortar role here? Because it is an experience, right. and then this whole thing around customers customers understanding the change that's taking place in a retail store or online. Are you good with that?
You bet.
Let's come back. Let's get into that. And I think the other thing that we will share with you is too that John and I talked about is this culture that's taking place in retail today, the omnichannel experience. And then as you're working or leading in the supplier area or on the retail side, we're going to share some stories and learnings that we have learned through that. And then I want to get into some of the things about, as a leader today, what are the skills and the competencies that we have today to be great leaders. So we'll take that apart.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. Well, John, I want you to wrap us up, but I want you to, I really want you to sort of wrap us up with 2 or 3 things that if you step back and look at your career, and you have a very successful career today that you've shared with us, and we will share online where you can get in touch with John and learn about his company and all the things he's doing. That'll be on our website, Doing Business in Bentonville. We'll get all that there for you so you can learn more about John. You can check him out on LinkedIn also. That's a good place to check you out.
Yes.
And because you got a lot of great stories on there too.
We do have some stories.
Which I like. And so you've done a really nice job. So close us out with a couple key learnings or things you'd like to share.
Well, thinking back, Andy, on my career, and I started in the stores, and to me, everything starts in the stores. I mean, everything that I do today, I go back to the stores to learn, and I spend a tremendous amount of time. I spend a tremendous amount of time in Walmart stores and competition, and that was one of the things that Sam taught us: is go where it matters. I remember a couple of Fridays, he would get on the intercom and say, hey, go to the stores and help. We're not doing anything here. Get out in the stores and help. Mm-hmm. And so everything that I've done since, and I always relate it to a customer putting it in a basket and taking it up and checking it out and what motivates them to put that in the basket. That's where I start, at the stores. And, just build from there. Yeah. So even if I'm in China and I travel to China extensively, I've been there over 50 times in the last 20 years, I go to the stores there, I look at the same thing, what customers are looking at, what they're buying. That's where it starts, and I still like to go in and talk to the Walmart people in these stores too, and find out what they're selling and what they like, and how they're responding to the customers. It's different today than it was when you and I were out there.
Yeah,
but that's where I always start.
I think that's such a great way to wrap this. It does start with that associate in the stores and that customer. Right. That that interaction with that customer. It's all about the customer, isn't it? At the end of the day,
It is.
It's about the customer. And if you have a physical location, it's about that physical location.
Right.
To touch. And you're right. So we would come back and on Fridays and we had to talk about where we've been, what we've seen.
Right.
How we're going to improve things. And we better talked about the competition.
Right.
Yeah.
And one thing I remember very clearly is you would never want to talk about negatives about the competition. I remember a couple of times somebody got up and talked about all the bad things that Kmart was doing, and man, I've never seen Sam just his temperature got elevated really fast. He said, "I don't care what they're doing bad. I want to know what they're doing good."
Yeah, that's right. What great way to end it. Great way to end it. John Reeves, thank you.
Hey, thanks.
Man, what a blessing and privilege just to spend time with you. I look forward to our next times together. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate what you're doing. You can check us out, as I mentioned, doing business in Bentonville.com. You can message us at dbbnwa.com. We'd love to hear from you. Again, check us out on your favorite streaming channels. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.